Hello again! Today I decided to make the Owlbear Cub and Scratch from Baldur's Gate 3. I hope you like it! I started off by making the Owlbear Cub. Like usual, I use foil and scrunch it into a ball in the kind of generic shape, and then I poke some holes for the arms to go through using metal wire. I always use Super Sculpey polymer clay as it works best for me. It's quite an easy clay to use, it feels like almost wax, it's quite soft, and then I go in and whack it. This kind of just helps it to warm up so it's easier to squish and mould and roll out. I do then shape around the foil using it, just in the, again, generic shape. It does take quite a while to kind of bulk it out and make sure that it is in the right form. To make the arms and legs, I just cut out some clay and roll it, cutting down the middle and making sure that it fits around the wire. I have had someone ask before if I just squish it up the wire, which I don't know really how that would work. I mean, you probably could do that, but it would definitely deform the clay. I might as well just say it now because it's going to happen a lot. I keep cutting the clay while it's in my hands, and that's very stupid. So if you're gonna use a knife, use it, don't use it like me. And I say this in every single video and I still never learn, and I need to. But either way, what I'm doing here is just making sure that there's a hole kind of in the body so that the head can fit in. I take away some clay so that the foil shape's better. I mean, the owlbear's head he doesn't really have a neck, does he? Kind of a bit chubby, but it's okay. I used lots of clay here because it's a weirdly shaped head. I got it more round or oval at the beginning, but then I need to round it out, and now I'm making the feet, look at them. So I just use a bit of clay. Usually I would add foil in them, but I mean, it really just depends on what my mood is. I just couldn't really be bothered here, and it doesn't really make a difference. But I use my mini fingers, and also I make the tail. I don't detail the tail just yet because it'll get smushed. So I'm going to do that later. But yeah, pressing the clay in. Oh yeah, with my little mini finger. Then I add more clay for the toes. Then I shape out the toes with this tool. Little toes. I also make paw pads here. Just cutting out some clay in a generic shape. I didn't really detail them very well, and I only added the little paw pads for, well, the big ones, not for each individual toe. I think the paws actually came out quite well in the end. You see I'm using pliers on the feet here. I'm actually adding little pieces of wire for the claws. Instead of sculpting it out, I'm just going to use wire just to make it easier. And in the end, you'll see I put some liquid clay over it, which kind of helps it secure. Here I am painting the eyes. Over this is really the only interesting part to it. Over this, I just paint the other colour. And then I shove it in the eye sockets. And he looks really cute. Got big beady eyes. How adorable. I then just add some more clay for the eyelids and kind of shape them out. I mean, it's really hard to get eyelids to look flat and normal. So instead of flattening them out, I actually just added more clay on the bottom and top of the head to make it seem like it was more flat. I also tried so many times on the beak. You see here, it's giant. I didn't mean to make it that big, but I kept underestimating how small it was. But then I kind of just went back to it after adding some little chubby cheeks. The only thing I put here in my notes while sculpting is that his ears look like Shrek here. I don't know why. I did make ears for the owlbear and then forgot to record it. My bad. Now that the full shaping is done of the body, I use my tools just to add the fur details. And also some texturing on the paw pads, just a little bit. On the paws, I use this little scrapey tool to make the fur, but on the rest of the body, I actually add clay. You'll see in a minute. I also shape out the beak a little bit. Again, to texture the face, I use this little spiky tool. It's not a ball. It's attached to the end of one of my ball tools, but it's more like an oval with a bit of a spike at the end. I also use my knife to cut out some clay of the face, just to give it more of a feathery kind of look. Give it more shape to the face. This is how I do the fur on the main body. So in rows around the body, I add these little tufts. I then smooth them out and then use that tool that I used earlier, the little spiky one, and give them texture. It takes so long, but it gives a really, really nice effect in the end that actually looks quite accurate to how the owlbear looks. For each row, I place them in between two from the previous row, just so that it kind of goes back and forth between the spaces where they are. I made the chest ones a little bit more wispy, and then for the rest of the body they're a bit shorter. So I did something really smart, believe it or not. You might be able to tell that the body is quite skinny compared to how the owlbear looks. It's quite a chubby little thing. But I planned that out. I made sure that the body was smaller to account for the thickness of the fur, so it would bulk it out more. Do not be fooled. This takes a very, very long time to do. It took me almost about a day just to add all the fur on. I do then go to the tail before adding the fur on the back. Don't look at that. I'm not doing that. I'm not cutting on my hand. Don't do that. Don't do it. Who does that? Don't do that. Anyways, yeah, use my mini fingers just to give it some texture. Make sure that it looks all feathery, like a little tail. I couldn't, for the life of me, find any images online of the owlbear's tail, so I just kind of had to wing it. But then, like I said, I went round in rows, and unlike the front, the back, I actually started to add some differentiation between the sizes of the little tufts of fur. Make it look more interesting and more fluffy, kind of more unruly and cuter. It looks cute. I did this for hours. It was actually quite fun. It's kind of like my signature fur detail, if you would. This is what I was talking about earlier. I added some liquid clay to the ends of the what are they called? Oh no. The claws. Ah, I'm smart. Anyways, claws. And that was the last thing that I had to do before baking it. Scratch time! With scratch, I started out with some wire instead of going straight to the foil. I tried a couple different things to get it to stand, but in the end I just kind of had to keep going back and forth. I tried using wire, foil, masking tape, more foil, but in the end I just decided to take it all apart and do the foil on each leg differently, like separately, sorry, and then put it together all with foil, and then wire, and then masking tape. So pretty much the same, just slightly different. I use my pliers just to shape out the legs as well, make sure that they're in the right positions. I rolled out some clay quite thickly and then cut it up, made sure that it would fit, and then kind of wrapped it round. I would have used my clay glue for this, but because the masking tape already kind of had a bit of a gritty texture, it was fine. I then used a wooden toothpick for the neck instead of wire. It just kind of holds its shape a bit better with the weight of the head, and kind of slowly started building up more clay. Similar to the legs on the owlbear, I rolled out some clay, cut a line down it, and then wrapped it around the leg and shaped it out. because the thickness of the clay when I rolled it out was consistent and the thickness of legs are inconsistent, I had to add more clay for the thighs. And also a little bit more for the butt because it was a bit thin, a bit too skinny. And also I made the neck really big here. I also added some extra clay for the chest hair and the back here as well, the little scruffy part, which I had to keep going back and forth on because it wouldn't work properly. The head was really small here. I did just keep going back and forth and making sure that, you know, it was big enough, thick enough, not too small. It's very difficult. After adding more clay for, you know, the head and the neck and all of that, I started to realise it was too short. So I did something kind of cruel, you could call it. I may or may not have cut Scratch in half, revealing all his innards of foil. And yeah, poor Scratch. And then I had to just put it back together, make sure that it was long enough, and then I started doing the paws. I did them pretty much the same as how I did the owlbear. I just want to take some time to explain my reasoning behind why Scratch was a lot harder to do than the owlbear. Kind of how I think about it is things like humans and cats and dogs will be harder to make because they're things that we see more. Owlbears don't exist. You can make them look however you want and call it an owlbear because they don't exist. Cats and dogs and humans do, and we see them almost every day, which means that you would be able to nitpick all the tiny little details when something's wrong, which is kind of my reasoning behind why I think Scratch looks a bit odd, at least right now. It does get better, but yeah, it's very difficult to get dogs looking right. But enough of that. Here I'm making the ears. I didn't forget to skip it this time. And I just kind of just make sure that they're thick enough because his ears are quite thin and floppy, but not too floppy. I'm gonna start making the tail, which again, it's a weird tail. It's kind of thin at the start and thick at the end. To make the collar, if you have a tool with a texture like this, use it. That texture is supposed to be used for a reason. It's really good. But I start making the collar. And also, I don't know if you know this. Well, actually, no, I take it back. It was in the thumbnail. But I made Scratch's ball. I made sure that I had enough of a reference to make it look accurate. And I just shoved it in his mouth, made it look like he was playing fetch. And then, like the owlbear, I started to do the claws in the same kind of way. In a bit, I'm going to start doing the fur texture. Of course, I start on the tail by adding shape to it. But instead of doing it the way that the owlbear was done, I did it kind of like this because it was more fitting, because he wasn't as fluffy. This gets very aggressive, but it also just kind of look like I'm just tickling him. Again, like the owlbear, I used this little scratchy tool to get the ears, the face, and kind of the bottoms of the legs, because there's a lot less fur there. And then jump cut because it's done! Look at that! And then I start using this sponge because sometimes you can get these little loose bits of clay, especially on the owlbear because of how much scraping I had to do, which just makes it a bit easier to paint because there won't be little flakes of clay coming off. I start off with this relatively dark brown for the owlbear, even though it's quite light and more of an orangey brown. But I paint it all over, make sure to get all in the little cracks under each of the fur. I miss out that little spot on the arms because on the owlbear model that is actually a bit lighter there. Again, with the white parts I start with grey because then, again, I'll add the white later because dry brushing is a lifesaver. Look, so when you dry brush, basically you get a little bit of paint on the brush and then just wipe it over. Usually in a lighter colour because it will keep the indents darker and then the raised areas, they will get lighter or whatever colour you choose to paint them. And it ends up looking really nice, really cute, and quite fluffy. See, this is where I start going in with that slightly lighter detail on the bottom of the arms. It doesn't make much of a difference, but you know. Also, I didn't know what colour the backs of the ears were, so I went with the grey because it seemed like it would be that. This is me dry brushing with the white to make it lighter, and then also I go in with the black on the paw pads, and also later on, right at the end, I dry brush with kind of a greyish, a very dark grey over the top. I paint the little claws a black, just because that's what they are. That's what I meant by the grey there. And then I start painting the beak. Again, in the end I do dry brush the grey over the top, like that. And the final touch is just to scrape off the eye. So I start off with the toothpick, and then I go in with this very fine scrapey tool. And then right at the end I use a paintbrush just to put some water on them, just to collect up the last bits of paint. And then I start painting Scratch. I start off with this kind of beige-ish kind of colour. Again, I know Scratch is white, but I dry brush over the top to make it a lot brighter. Weirdly, getting into all the cracks from Scratch was quite hard, just because of how I textured it earlier, but I ended up doing it. Around the eyes I added black, because that's what it looks like. I had to touch it up later, because it looked more like eyelashes. And then also I did the ears, the nose, around the mouth all black as well, and also the claws later on. I do it a little messy now, but the dry brushing with the white later will clear it up. I didn't really know the colour of the collar, nor did I know the patterns too well, so I kind of just went in, tried to do the best from what references I had, but it was very difficult. And also this little charm, again, I couldn't find many pictures of it online, and I don't actually have Scratch in my Baldur's Gate save. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to get him at the time. But yeah, I go in, dry brushing white over the top. It really makes it a lot lighter. You can't really tell here, but it does. He actually looks white now. And then I go in, paint the claws. A little bit messily, but I do go back and make sure to touch it up. And you see how around the eyes it looks very messy. Yeah, you can see now it looks different. I went back over with white over the top. And then I also used some gloss on Scratch for the pendant, his nose, the ball, and that's mostly it. I genuinely love how this duo came out. I think they're so cute together, and the details really came out nicely. I just want to quickly just take the time to say thank you for sticking around, but also just let me know what you think about this video. Instead of my normal, you know, putting the footage in the right speed, this time I did speed it up just a little bit, just to kind of see if it would help just with watching it. I know it can be sometimes a bit boring when a detail takes a very long time and you just watch me very slowly doing the little bits, but just let me know what you think of the slightly more sped up video. Thank you so much for sticking around. From the last video, I hit 50 subscribers, and that is just absolutely insane to me. I've only been doing this for a few months, and I just thank you. As I am speaking right now, I think I am on currently 54. So if you did enjoy this video, a like and a subscribe would be so appreciated. Thank you for sticking around this long if you did, and have a great day. Go play some Baldur's Gate. Bye bye.